Hello and welcome to the Nash Tackle Off the Hook podcast and to our once again slightly makeshift of COVID secure as we can make it environments. Just as a disclaimer, apologies for any difference in sound. Obviously the setting and sound has changed slightly because we're in here, but obviously that means that we can still bring it to you. And we are bringing you part 3 of a Carp Fishing Journey from Mr. Kevin Nash himself. Kev, how are you, mate? Thanks for joining me.
I'm good. A little bit cold, as you say. Yeah, they don't know what we go through to give them this podcast, do they?
We've had some snow in Essex for a change.
We have indeed, yes, all week. Unusual though, yeah. When I was really much younger, the ambition of most carp anglers is to get a carp in the snow and just pray for it to snow, grab the rods and get out. But invariably, what stopped you was the lakes were frozen when it snowed. I only actually did it once. That's a story for another day. But this one, we've had the snow on the ground and lakes have been open for 3 days. I've never seen it before like that. They only froze last night, 4th night. But yeah, as you say, another 3 inches night before last. But hopefully the sun's going to get up and it'll melt it the next couple of days. I've had enough of it now.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, we're going to pick up from where we left off on part 2. So part 2, you finished talking about concluding your time on Harefield. From that point, where did we move on to or what happened?
I had a kind of bit of a mix of fishing. I was still dabbling in a snake pit, although a lot of the time you just couldn't fish it because it becomes so weedy or green algae. I did a bit of river fishing. Most of that next 4 or 5 years also become really fixed on adventuring. Loved adventures, going to new countries. Really got into that. I guess the first big one after Harefield was going to Gran Canaria.
Wow. That is a change of scenery, mate, that is. In terms of sort of what age were you? Where was sort of tackle and everything else around this time?
This is the end of the 80s, so I put that first little black and white catalogue out in 82, 83 was it, and that had carp sacks, stainless steel baiting needles, the carp crave flavours, carp sling, that's about it. So 5 years forward, I've got a factory, 70 machinists. We went into carp luggage. No one had ever made luggage for carp anglers. We used to go to camping shops or army surplus to get rucksacks and that. So I was making carp luggage in that. The rod holder really changed everything. Hooker rod holder for made up rods. The carp carryalls are huge. Making all the bivvies now, over wraps. It was quite a big company.
Wow,
big company.
That's a massive sort of increase in 5 years, mate.
It was out of control, really. I always said, I was just a kid, an engineer who kind of got into making the tackle as a way of going fishing, but it just all got out of control. I was never an accountant or money man. I didn't understand all that. Actually, I had an accountant who had us over, actually. She was... we wasn't making money. I hadn't priced the product high enough. All she wanted to do was make sure she kept her salary. So she was filling the books in a way, so the bank kept on lending me money. And it got to the point when we had the financial crash in the early 90s where it all come home to roost and I was in the right state. But all that happens a little bit later. But so this is...
colourful, mate. Yeah. Very colourful indeed.
I think the Harefield, I think I painted this mad picture of us having this huge party, which it was. But 1 year of that was enough, frankly. I miss catching carp, and I think when I focused in the winter, come up with the lead eject system and the tackle ideas like the rods and reels, I was really gagging to get back into my carp fishing. And so I got a phone call from Dave Plummer that winter. He was a specimen hunter from up north. Can't quite remember where he lived or had lived. But he was a train driver. And he decided to move to Norfolk, Norwich, because of the pike fishing and that. He loved his pike fishing. And he opened a tackle shop there. And so he became a customer, but as well as that, a good friend. Anyway, slowest time of year was January, February for tackle trade. So he used to go to Gran Canaria for his family holidays.
Yeah.
This year, they took a jeep safari up into the mountains. Basically, do a day trip where you drove a jeep, and there's a guy in the head jeep and a guy in the end back jeep. Keep an eye on you, make sure he didn't fall off the road, because they used to, trust me.
I'll bet.
Oh yeah. As an aside, the road up to those lakes in the really hairy. There was no barriers then. About a car half width wide. You'd look down and be looking down 400 or 500 feet. It just burnt out. Safari jeeps because what they used to do is take them touring and they'd stop for lunch at a restaurant.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes the holiday mate's got a bit tanked up, and as I said, went over the edge. But I think they brought a few restrictions in the end.
Yeah, it's too right.
But anyway, I digress. So Dave went on this safari up in the mountains, and they stopped for for lunch at this village called Tachira, because had a little tavern there, and there was also a reservoir next to it. So the safari leaders used to then take people to the reservoir and have a little swim to cool down.
Yeah, nice.
And Dave was having a swim, and as he put it, this dirty great carp swam past. So he rang me, and I was well up for it. I said, let's go. Somewhere along the line, I think in his enthusiasm, he let it leak that we was going over there to try and beat the world carp record.
No, what was the world carp record at the time?
I ain't got a clue, mate. But the next thing I remember was my phone going at work, and it was someone from Anglia TV.
Yeah.
That's a lot that used to produce the John Wilson programs later. And they'd heard we was going over to try and break the world carp record, and could they come? Blah blah. And I was really cross with Dave, because fishing first. And I said to him, I said to him, I ain't going if we're going over there to make a bloody film. I'm going over there because I want to enjoy the adventure and catch a carp. So.
Had you done any filming before this at the time, or not really?
Never.
No.
Never.
Okay.
Never. And I always kept me fishing separate from anything for the company, publicity wise, and I did that all my life really, which is why certain companies come along and really got a grip over us, because they understood marketing, whereas my fishing was always a very private thing. I go fishing for me. Never the two will mix. But anyway, so this adventure's planned. The big first issue we've got is weight restrictions on the plane, which was, if I recall, 22 kilos.
Right.
You could also pay for one item of sporting luggage.
Yeah.
But 22 kilos, if I recall, my bed, chair and sleeping bag weighed 16.
Tight.
So that's left me 6 kilos.
Yeah.
Plus the rod tube for sporting. So, so we got to hold hand luggage was 5.
Okay.
So I had a rucksack with, I think, one change of clothing in it, which the plan was to save that for the journey back.
Right.
Reels and that went in my hand luggage.
Yeah.
The rest of my luggage weight, rucksack weight was my tackle box.
Yeah.
That's that done. And then I got my rods in a tube. I taped a umbrella to the side of the tube and bank sticks. Of course, my bite alarms and my hand luggage, what I remember now. And then sleeved that all in plastic. So that's that done.
Wow.
Problem is, I wanted to take 20 kilos of bait, and the leads was a worry as well. From what David described, it was a reservoir up in the mountains and a lot of submerged foliage, bushes, bamboo in the margins, depending on what the level was. So he's telling me about rocks. I'm thinking it's going to be very snaggy. So, I mean, lead you take for 2 weeks, you know, and 4 up and 10. If you said 10 4-ounce leads, that's losing less than 1 a day.
Yeah.
You know, and that's 40 ounces. So that's 2 odd.
Yeah, you're essentially planning for something you just have no idea. Really,
I have no idea. And I want to take 20 kilos of boilies. So I filled the rod tube up with boilies, and I got one of my machinists to sew all pockets into this waterproof jacket I decided to take. So I had all pockets inside and filled them up with leads. I think a few little space left. I filled with boilies as well. And I had, I think, 2 or 3 layers of clothing on, like T-shirts and shorts underneath my jeans. You know, luckily it was March, so it's cold going to the airport. But it wasn't cold on the plane. I nearly fucking died of heat. But all these clothes on. But I'll never forget. I got to security, you know, the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
You know, put your hand luggage and that on. And I put my jacket on it, and the conveyor belt screeched to a halt, you know, because of the weight on it, you know. And then there's an almighty blur alarm going off because they looked in my jacket and they see all these long pointy things that look like a 303 bullet. You know, you used to use it less then. So there's all security around me, all hell let loose. Anyway, they eventually let me go. Well, they must have done because I got there. But
and you weren't over your baggage limit?
No, I did it, mate. Well, we was. Yeah, I was. I think my jacket alone weighed about 15 kilos. You know, I say, but technically, you know, how they weighed the things we were. But I can tell you some stuff. I really got good at putting strokes. You know, from future trips. You know, because I remember I went with Gary Bays and we just took Coleman stoves. You know.
Yeah.
And you siphon petrol out of your petrol tank.
Yeah.
It goes with Basie, and it goes a diesel motor. So we put diesel in the Coleman stove, and it wasn't well. It just wasn't happy. It wasn't happy. In fact, I'd had that Coleman stove for 10 years. I was gutted. I left it with a couple of brummies. But poor old thing was on its last legs. It just didn't like the diesel. So after that, I decided, sod it. You know, at least I'd make sure I had a full tank of petrol. Yeah. So I used to fill the Coleman stove to the top with petrol. And they used to X-ray. I'll never forget. They put it for the X-ray machine, you know, because they're getting wise to us now. Then, you know, I take your gear to the X-ray machine, and I saw my Coleman stove come up. Yeah. She said, "Is that empty?" I said, "Yeah, you can see it." You know, so you'd be able to see the petrol level. Luckily, I'd filled it to the absolute brim. So otherwise, she'd have saw the levels. She's gone off. You know, off you go. You know, say nowadays, I think that's a bomb in it. You know, I think they'd have something to say about that now.
I wouldn't try and smuggle a car.
You wouldn't now in times of tourism, but this is before tourism. Yeah. So it was even taking petrol on the planes and all that. But
dab hand at smuggling. Before Gran Canaria and this trip, had you done any fishing at all in France or anywhere else on the continent, or was this your first sort of venture?
I've gone to France a couple of times. This is a time when it's really kicking off, you know, Rod and all that lot were going to Hassan and all that. I never really got into it. I think probably the main reason was that it was difficult for me to have a lot of time off work because the business was going crazy, you know. That was, you know, the key reason. And kind of, I've never liked following. Right. You know, if that makes sense. You know, I guess the Harefield time and all that, that was the first time I'd really been on waters that were heavily pressured, you know, circuit waters. You know, you go back, you know, there's some stories told. We was discovering the lakes that had the carp in. So, you know, this is where it's all coming together, and loads of people now are carp fishing, and I kind of, it wasn't me just, you know, so-and-so's been in this lake and caught a big one, so I'm going to go down there and, you know, have a go as well at the big one. You know, that wasn't kind of my scene at that time. So, yeah, other than a couple of trips to France, I hadn't done anything. I never really got into the French thing either, because again, it was waters where, you know, anglers are gone and were going, you know, I didn't. Yeah. Kind of didn't really feel the buzz for going, you know, all the way abroad, and then, you know, you just sitting on the lake with loads of other English anglers, you know, just didn't really do it for me. But,
whereas Gran Canaria had that air of mystery about it, didn't it?
David has seen one carp. Where we going all that way, and there's only one carp. Who knew? Who knows?
Yeah.
So we eventually got there, pulled the strokes and got there. I was going to just tell you one story. It wasn't Canary, but I got so good at pulling strokes and getting well beyond the gear over. When I had the lake in France that I owned, I took 3 lads out from work, and I'd said to them, do not take more than 5 kilo in your hand luggage. I said, because they're dead strict at the airport, dead strict. I told them how to distribute stuff. Anyway, we walked up to, I met him at the airport. There was Londoners. Chippy Dave, bless him. He's
it's Chippy Dave?
Yeah, he's my warehouse man. And Chippy Paul and Lee, who run the bait factory.
Yeah.
And I met him at the airport, and at the desk, they've all got monster carryalls.
Oh, no.
Oh, what are you doing? They hadn't heard me properly or listened, so they've got basically all their gear, in this monster carryall as hand luggage. So I got on the desk and I said, put them down there, because they've got really high desks, didn't they, where the woman sits, I said, put on the floor. And she ticked. She said, right, can I see your hand luggage? Yes, love. Okay, put it on. So I put my bag on. This is good, 5 kilos. Next, I took it off, put it round the corner, picked it up again, put it on.
The same one.
That's all right, love. I did it 4 times. You can see Chippy Dave's eyes rolling.
No. And you got away with that?
I said, get the fuck out of here now. Yeah. Oh, it's funny. Some of the strokes he's full. Yeah, but anyway, where was I? Yeah, so we got to Gran Canaria. I've never been there before, by the way. Never seen it.
Classic Nashy, straight into the deep end.
And it was late afternoon where we had to get fishing permits. You had to go to the agricultural ministry, if I remember. So we drove down to that, got them sorted. I think that was an hour or 2 wait. We're in Spanish time now. Anyway, when we started the journey up into the mountains, it was pitch black, and I think we got there, 11, 12 at night. All I know is it'd been a long day. I think we got up at like 4 o'clock. It was shattered, and it was pitch black and no moon. You couldn't even see really the lake. So we elected to get our head down in the car, a few hours sleep, and start at dawn. And the next thing I knew it was like World War III.
What?
I've woken up. I think this missile rocket attack going on. It's unbelievable.
No way.
Yeah, it was Dave snoring.
Oh.
Never heard the like of it before or since.
Really? Literally like a firing squad going off in your car. That's not the one, is it?
Oh, it's not the one. No. So I decided to sleep outside. So I went to boot, got my bed out, and laid under the stars. And I never get it. I was laying there and I heard crash, and then crash again. Oh. And I heard clear movement of big fish, certainly miles away in the blackness, but big fish miles away, they just had to be carp. So I was absolutely buzzing. I hardly slept at all, just lay there listening to him under the stars and magical moment.
Did you have any idea of how big the sheet of water was? Did you have any intel on it before, or was it literally just on that sighting?
Only what Dave told me. He was pretty vague. I have to say, fishing with Dave those 2 weeks was mega fun for a lot of reasons. One, that he hadn't carp fished before, so okay. I had some chuckles at his expense. He's a great lad, but I couldn't get any idea out of him on the size of the water. Really, he just maybe he wasn't good at estimating size of water, but I knew in his view it was big. But, I think it's about 120 acres actually.
Right.
So it was quite a lump of water. And so this dawn come up, and sure enough, we're looking out over this vista of a pretty large lake. It was a main bowl of water. We was looking out at a reservoir. The dam wall to our left. And there's this big main bowl of water. And there was a peninsula that went out, kind of square area that had been cleared one of the locals was planning to turn into a campsite, and that bottlenecked the lake. And then after that, it split into two arms that went up to the end by the village. Dave, for whatever reason, I don't know, that's where he went swimming. He wanted to start on the peninsula.
Okay.
So he picked a spot on the corner, which gave me either the choice of being right of him, which had been the bottleneck, narrow part of the lake, which I didn't really fancy, or to his left, which went into a bay, which kind of, he was in prime spot on the corner, but whatever, it's just about us catching carp in the beginning. So I went to his left, started fishing. Me, by them, I'm using 6-8-inch hook links, 4 ounce lead, give them some lead. We really learned about bolt rigs by this time. Lead. I had the hairs moved from being tied to the bend of the hook. We've got it around the side now because the action dropped off.
Right.
Pinned with tube, and I've learned about kicking off the knot. Care Bear showed me that at Harefield, kicking off the knot. So this is like what later become known to be the liner. We started doing that. So I've got a really effective rig, whereas Dave's approach was more how he would have fished for his roach or his bream. He was fishing Cumberland, I think. Is it Cumberland? That big water up north reservoir?
Clumber Park.
That's it, Clumber Park.
Yeah.
That was very famous for his roach, wasn't it?
Yeah, it did have some big roach in it.
Yeah, he used to fish that. So he's more on running or paternoster routes with like 18-inch hook links.
Yeah.
Anyway, I put bodies out. He'd taken along a couple of cans of sweet corn. Right. So he's got sweet corn on one rod and bodies on the other two. He had this thing about carp must be really spooky because they was really wild.
Yeah.
So I'd set up my rods and put my bed near the rods on this kind of beach.
Yeah.
But he thought we should really hide away and conceal ourselves, which kind of puzzled me a bit because the water was a muddy colour. But who am I to argue? I am, believe it or not, one to keep the peace. So I agreed that we'd set up our base camp about 15 foot up this slope and hide behind these big boulders, as it were. So we're doing that, and suddenly he's got bleep, bleep, bleep on his sweet corn rod. He jumped up, gone running down. Dave's a big bloke, gone running down, and the bleep stopped. Possibly because, the unassuming fish who's just investigating his sweet corn suddenly heard like a herd of elephants coming down the hill towards it. So, climbs back up. 5-10 minutes later, he gets another couple of bleeps. He's gone, hurtling down. So after a while, I suggested to him that possibly it might be better if we moved near our rods, so it could be much more. To avoid the peaceful and quiet about it, which really upset him actually because he'd started building a wall out of boulders. More about that later. But anyway, so we've now much near our rods, and eventually he's had a take that's gone from twitches into more hittable, and he hit it, and up has come this little carp of about 4 or 5 pound, testing its head off. Not really what it's after, but it's a lovely little mirror. Oh, cool one. It's definitely carp in it.
Yeah.
My confidence was waning after he's had about 12.
Really?
I've had no action at all because I'm on the boilies.
What boilies did you have at the time? Do you remember?
Scopex. Scopex. Orangey colour.
Okay.
Orangey yellow. More of that later. So that first night, I think he's had like 12. Excuse me, I've got a really dry throat today. He had about 12 small carp.
Yeah.
6-8 pound.
All on sweet corn.
All on sweet corn. I think it might have been that evening. A better fish rolled over him, and then it rolled over my baits by now I've also put one on sweet corn.
Yeah. And
I think I had a fish that might have been 18, so it was a bit better.
Wow.
Bit better. Next day, similar pattern. I think I've now put 2 rods on sweet corn. I'm not getting a twitch on the boilies.
Yeah.
And that evening, I wasn't getting half the action he was. So definitely on that corner, he was probably getting, I don't know, 10, 15 fish, whereas I was getting 2 or 3. But again, that evening, a bigger fish rolled over him. But it come to me. I figured out that after that, it could be because I was using much bigger hook baits. I didn't want to catch these 4 or 5 pounders, which is why I was, maybe also why I was catching less. So I was putting like 20 grains on the hook.
Yeah.
And that, if I remember, was a good 20. And then the following day, again, another one rolled over him in the evening, always the evening, bigger fish. And again, it went off on me, and that was a 30. So
wow,
we actually caught a 30 on the third day.
That's a mega fish.
Mega fish that time, yeah. So anyway, died the 4th. So we decided to move. I'd been wandering around, and I'd baited a couple of other places more down towards the dam.
Okay.
And we moved onto one of them, and again, I got another 30.
Wow.
I think we had a couple of 20s as well. So the fish was slowly getting bigger, but it was so rare amongst all these, small ones. Dave wanted to go back to the peninsula.
Yeah.
But we decided to fish in the bottleneck. I wasn't keen on it because just looking at the banks, it looked really steep, and so I assumed it would be steep, into the water. But we did. And that night, I'll never forget as long as I live. The wind got up. When I say it got up, it was crazy. It got to the point where you'd hear it coming like a train, and then it'd build in, and then it'd just go crack.
What?
It was difficult not to jump. When it was like someone's got a shotgun right next to your ear, lightning crack, and it was where the air was compressing through this bottleneck.
Yeah,
it's weird. Never heard it before or since, but it got so strong. It was really hairy. I only had an over. We only had. Dave had a Steads umbrella. I think I had an over umbrella.
Right.
And I got me rod bags out. The cloth rod bags. I'd put me rods in to bring them over in tube, and I tied my umbrella down on the outside boss to rocks, and put a cloth rod bag around the inside boss, and then tied it to me rucksack and another rock. Really pulled it down.
Yeah.
And I was behind a big boulder, and I basically got through the night. But I never forget when it got light, I got up and the wind sent me reeling down the bank. So I wasn't prepared to it, being sheltered behind this rock and me brolly. Kind of sent me reeling. Well, I got me balance, and I walked down to Dave, and so like I said, he was a big boy. I guess at least 18 stone, and his umbrella's gone. That by now is somewhere in Kenya, I would imagine. But I never forget, he was clutching the frame of his bed. His knuckles were white, and it was vibrating. Nearly jumping off the ground. The rods were everywhere. We gave up fishing ages ago. You couldn't keep a rod.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it was a real hairy night. That
is Savage Gardens, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. So I've never fished in a hurricane before or since. But
was it actually a hurricane?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they said on the news afterwards. It was I don't know, ridiculously strong winds. Did a lot of damage on the island.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's how the Titan come about. Actually,
You're joking?
no, it's
Go on, unpack that for me then. From hurricanes to Titan.
Yeah, it was a couple of days later. The wind got up again, not to the hurricane force, but it was really strong. And I was watching these trees on the ridge of the far bank cliffs.
Yeah.
There was, I don't know, about 6, 8 trees along them. And all bar one were absolutely straight like sentinels. The strong wind was just going through them.
Yeah.
But one of them was going swaying backwards and forwards really quite violently, and I was watching it, and it just got to the point where it couldn't bend anymore. It just literally just cracked and snapped. Yeah, and I just, for some bizarre reason, I transferred that to bivvies. I.e., you need to take the flex out of a shelter. We're using volleys with flexible ribs, or people are now using camping tents, with flexible poles.
Yeah.
And I thought, you need to take the flex out, and that's how the idea of a rigid frame come about. And then that went to the idea of fanning it, and that's how the Titan come about.
That's mad. So Gran Canaria and wind
was responsible for the Titan.
Mad.
Which was the first rigid framed shelter ever developed. After that, they had the Pramwoods, which again took that rigid frame idea.
Wow.
Yeah. The other thing about that night, or the next day, sitting there, to the right, I could see as I said, the right end of the lake split into two arms.
Yeah.
I could see the back arm, which we'd never been able to see before, because you couldn't see it from the bank we was on. You could only see it if you was in effect, in line with it on this peninsula. And I saw several really big swells and crashes. I hadn't seen any up until this morning. So I said, today I want to get round it.
Yeah.
And that was a bit of a mission. I had to drive up this really narrow track. We only had a little hire car. It was a 4x4 job. We got to top, and then probably had to walk down a real big hill, then across a stream. I don't know, we probably walked about half a mile.
Yeah.
Say tough terrain and really windy weather. Anyway, we got there, and that changed everything. That's where the big carp lived, basically, in this back arm.
Because up until this point, you've had a couple of 30s, haven't you? But you've had a load of little fish, all on corn. And then this change of location has prompted a better stamp of fish, has it?
Yeah, well, I'd had maybe 6, 7 fish, in the doubles. Yeah.
Okay.
2 30s, maybe 2 3 20s, and a double. I think David had a 20 and a couple of doubles in that back arm. I think in the next day I had something like 6, 8, upper 20s.
Yeah.
I ended up, I think, with 6 30s for that trip, but so many 28s, 27s, 29s. Yeah.
You found like the honey hole.
Found the honey hole. It was day fishing. At night, your average weight absolutely crashed. And I'm sure I know what happened. They moved out of there at night and went down the dam, which may have been why I caught that 30 down the dam.
Yeah.
But so they didn't really linger along the bottleneck. That was just get through this and then get to the dam end at night. And then I'd see them coming up from the dam from dawn onwards. Those singular fish. It was really interesting. You see them roll, like, I don't know, 500 metres away.
Yeah.
Then they'd be coming up in 50 metres increments, and they'd be rolling as they got nearer. And then when you could hear them, true as I sit here, a 30 would snort like a pig when it rolled. Never 29.
No.
Yeah, you see a fish roll, and that could be a 29.
Yeah,
it rolled and snorted, it was a 30. So they'd be come up the lake rolling, and they'd get to my baited area, and then one would roll, and if it snorted, I knew I was just about to catch a 30.
No way.
Yeah, and honestly, I've never heard carp snort like that when they roll.
Snort?
Just like pigs, they go...
Wow.
Really, I don't know whether it's the oxygen or low level oxygen in the water, I don't know, but I've never seen it before or since. But yeah, so where this is going, imagine the excitement. You've watched a big carp rolling, moving up the bank, and it's over your rods and it rolls and it snorts like a pig. Because, it was really easy pickings then. Sweet corn was a magic bait. I'm putting in by this time big beds. We actually, we never caught a carp on a boilie.
Really?
In fact, when we left, I tipped 20 kilos of boilies down the mountain.
Really?
But
where did you get your corn from?
Well, in effect, we was grazing every shop we could. You know, we was spending probably a third the day shopping for sweet corn, clearing out supermarkets. In fact, Rod Hutchinson followed us out a month or two back later when the word got out. You know, we'd been there, and he struggled to get sweet corn, and he accused me and Plummer of stitching him up. Of course, we didn't. Stitch, because this is when me and Rod weren't talking.
Yeah.
The catch and fracas. But we spent 180 quid on sweet corn, which is a serious amount of money. Those days. But I'd say I was putting in like 15 cans.
Yeah.
At a time, and I think that's why I caught much more than Dave. I was really baiting heavily, and plus I was using a lot bigger baits, as I said. Whereas he was still using 1 or 2 grains. But Dave did all right as well. He had a number, of good fish. I think he had 1 or 2 30s as well.
But those smaller fish, did they all wane off in this new location, or was there still the odd smaller fish in there?
Depends how you fished.
Right.
The big fish definitely either kept the small ones away, or the small ones got out of the way in the day.
Yeah.
I then realised if you wanted a sleepless night, just fish at night. Dave had been a specimen hunter. He just milked every moment. He hadn't learned, as I'd learned about, there's times to rest the swim and get your lines out.
Yeah.
And so he was fishing all night. In fact, the biggest he caught was 14 pound at night. I mentioned it to him, but it never stopped him.
No.
So the pattern was in the evening we'd bait up, and then walk up to the village, because it was very challenging living. Living like rats, really. There was a bar in the village, real men's bar. Never had saw women go in there.
Yeah.
Really long bar, I guess 25, 30 yards long.
Right.
Polished. Wow. Wood was polished. It was immaculate. In fact, it was an old boy, one arm, who owned it, and his nephew, cocky little lad, I guess 16, 17, serving there, and he'd pour you a beer, and always had the beer mats. If you didn't put on the beer mat, he'd be straight there and put on the beer mat. Yeah. I'll tell you a story about that place in a minute, but and they did omelettes. So Dave's ordered an omelette the first night he went up there, and it's come out, and it was green. What? And I swear it was moving on the plate.
Oh.
No frigging way I was eating that.
Yeah.
He did. He had a stomach, unbelievable constitution. One night I think he was a bit poorly, but the rest of the time he seemed to thrive on these rotten egg omelettes. But I was a bit fussy with food. Anyway, opposite the bar was a garage. It literally was an up and over door. Inside was a hardware store.
Yeah.
And they also sold cheese and that, and bread. So I used to go over there and get cheese and bread. And they must have sold marmalade as well. And that's really what I lived on.
Cheese, bread and
marmalade for 2 weeks, whereas Dave was living on rotten omelettes in the evenings.
Sounds luxurious, mate.
Yeah, one evening I went up to the bar on my own. I think he might have been feeling poorly after his green omelette the night before, or whatever. And there was a football match. Spain or Barcelona were playing some other country's team, and it was just mobbed with all these Spaniards. And in the far corner, at the far end, by the way, was a fruit machine that used to burst into a birdie song on its own account, like every half an hour. Anyway, I could barely. There's just one stall left at the far end in the corner. The TV's the other end. So I sat on that, just enjoying a pint, watching the spectacle. If that ball went an inch over the halfway line, the Spanish were jumping up and down, throwing drink everywhere. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Spain scored.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. bottles and glasses being thrown at the sea, and there's glass showering everywhere. I'd half of it down my neck when I went to sleep that night. I woke up, what the hell, and dug out a bit. There's glass flying everywhere, and everyone's screaming. And then all this, suddenly the fruit machine burst into a birdie song. It's a mad place.
Sounds like a top night, mate, that.
Oh, yeah, it's a really mad place. Say a mountain village, that's some great times up there, actually. That lad I told you about behind the bar, I went back with Gary. He took us scrumping for oranges.
Okay.
Right, after we had a big piss up. Yeah. Anyway, he took us into this orange grove, and I picked 3 or 4 oranges and ate them. He did the same. Yeah. Gary has always been a greedy bug all his life, and he's opened up his jumper and he's got this huge pile of oranges, and the bloke's looking at him, just looking at him, and we're standing there, and what the kid's saying, you've got to eat them.
He didn't, did he?
He didn't have any choice. The lads made it quite clear, no, you can't walk, you've got to eat them. And I don't know whether you know the law in countries like Spain, but they don't fence the orange groves.
Right.
Oh, they never used to. They do now. I understand why now. But basically, they don't fence any orange groves or orchards because anyone is welcome by law to go and pick a fruit and eat it. But you're not allowed to take it away.
So you've got to eat whatever you have there.
Got to eat there, and there you have then. Yeah.
How many did he get through?
I can't remember. The whole jumper full.
That's...
Yeah, and that's now why you often see places fenced because because by law they can't stop people eating the fruit, so they have to fence it to try and keep them out.
Wow.
But anyway, I digress. But so I wasn't fishing at night, so I was just going up having a few beers and then getting my head down. And because I've baited all night, and I wasn't bothering to get the rods out early until I actually saw signs of fish coming up. I was giving the fish a chance to get on the bait. So I think that's another reason I caught more than Dave, because I say I'm resting the swim, whereas he's constantly hammering it.
In terms of the comparison between how you were fishing when you were fishing on the peninsula to how you're fishing there, lead size, everything the same, rig wise all the same with a sort of a liner, or was there a change in sort of range or any sort of terminal tackle with regards to rigs and stuff?
No, it's all very simple, and I've always believed keep it simple with rigs, but just 4 ounce fixed leads. I think about 6 inch hook lengths, kept them relatively short to avoid bite offs. I'd learnt that from fishing particles prior, if you have them too long, and especially with fish that haven't been fished for. So definitely, if I recall, it was 6 inch hook lengths, and it was really just swing the bait out. I was quite literally fishing 2-3 metres out.
Wow.
As always doing. What I did quickly suss was to find areas where the bank was as flat as possible, very flattish slopes into water, because that then reflected what was under the water. It's very clear if it was steep banks, you didn't catch in those areas because it was steep under the water as well.
Okay.
So he's looking for flat areas, so the bottom of the shelf underneath would be very flattish as well, so I don't know, it's just probably just so the bait could stay there, I guess. Otherwise, God knows where it could have ended up.
What sort of depths were we talking? Was there much differentiation between, again, the two areas, or was it pretty consistent with regards to depth?
No, it was all over the place.
Was it?
On that back channel, I was fishing near, just in front of a bed of bamboo. Again, it's probably a particular hot spot, good ambush point, somewhere for the area, the fish to investigate. So, what was that bamboo? I guess that bamboo was probably only 4 or 5 foot of water there, But I went back with Gary and I fished further into the lake, and I was fishing 30 metres, the deepest I ever caught carp, actually. I caught a 30, 30 metres there.
30 metres.
And mostly just, and what would happen is, like I say, a lot of time I'd see the fish come into the swim, and it was just amazingly simple fishing and easy. As soon as if I ever knew a fish had come into the swim, I just knew I was going to catch it. Say, because they were just obsessed with the sweet on. So I'd just go down and kneel next to me rod, and normally the rod tip would just go like that.
Yeah,
you just see it pull over and stay static. They've got hooked up and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, of course.
So as soon as the rod tip pulled over, I just wound into it and boom, all hell went loose.
That sounds amazing, mate. Like untouched.
I think it was 180 carp we caught.
180 carp
in 2 weeks. Yeah, but like I said, at least probably 80 of them were small. But but a lot of really good, unbelievable fishing. I've never to this day's experienced big fish carp in those numbers.
I mean, that's mad.
Beautiful fish as well. A lot of them, really heavily scoured. Really long as well. I think where we was lucky, from my understanding of the history of the Canaries, what was the Spanish dictator? What was his name? Franco.
Right.
Was it Franco?
My history's poor, mate, so don't quote me on
anyway, I'm sure it was. He'd gone over to the Canaries and he had agreed to stocking the mountain reservoirs with carp because they had a big mosquito problem.
Okay.
So they stocked with carp and I think bass to keep the mosquitoes down. And it was Tachira, the lake we was on, was the first lake they stocked. Right. So we went to the gold mine in the beginning where the carp had been there the longest. The next best I knew was one further up the mountain called I think it was called Nina's. There's two, Sarai or Nina. I think it was Nina's. That was an old hippie colony.
Right.
Because the hippies went over there in the 60s, and they lived in the caves. In fact, when we went, there was still some hippies living up there. Might still be up there now. In fact, I remember. Here's a story. Was it with Plummer or Basie? I think it was with Plummer. I've got up one morning and just chilling in the sun because it was really cold at nights.
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't told you. Say after the hurricane night, Plummer's lost his brolly.
Yeah.
Well, he'd gone with a bed chair, a brolly, and a summer camping sleeping bag. Something you use in the midsummer. He had a shell suit jacket, shorts. All like gear he would have taken when he was on holiday.
Yeah,
I'd taken my army sleeping bag, my over umbrella, my false tent suit, quilted undersuit, and I had my waterproof jacket. So I was a bit more prepared. Never miss anything because you don't know what you're going to come up to. But it was really freezing cold, really cold winds when we went up that arm, and I had no choice but to share my gear out with Dave.
Oh, yeah,
so because I had the decent sleeping bag, I gave him the umbrella. So whilst the winds were freezing cold, the sun was coming out. I'll never forget. One day I was in this umbrella in my sleeping bag. My teeth were chattering, and I looked up the bank, and he's sheltered behind my umbrella with just his shorts on and a t-shirt, sunbathing. I could have killed him. Really could have killed him. And he had a suitcase, and I had the rucksack. Well, I don't know where I was going with that, but
the hippies. Were there some residual hippies?
Oh yeah. So you'd get up, you'd wake up in the morning. It was really cold at night, but the moment the sun come over the cliffs, it just ate into you. Just amazing feeling. Like jumping into a hot tub.
Beautiful.
And I was just chilling in the sun, and I heard whoosh, whoosh, from my left. So Dave was well to my left. I could just about see him around the corner if I stood up. And someone swimming towards me. It was a blonde girl. She swam past me about 15 yards. Yeah. Got out and just walked up the mountain. Stark bollock naked.
No way.
Hair down to her waist. 25, real looker, like I couldn't believe it.
This is the place for Kevin Nash, man.
This is the place for
you didn't. Yeah, make residence.
But I've gone up to Dave. Dave, what? He didn't see her.
He didn't see her?
I still to this day wonder if I was hallucinating. But I'm sure I wasn't. But he never saw her. And she must have swam past him. But anyway, maybe. Well, I never know. But I think, don't know what he was doing. He's probably asleep. I reckon she was one of these girls from that hippie.
Yeah.
Up there.
It sounds very, boho, mate. Naked swimming.
Yeah. And I spoke to, the rest of the story is Dave and Alison, who went over and did Canary, now got Canary holidays. Dave has seen her as well. So.
Has he?
So, yeah,
the Phantom Gran Canaria mermaid.
Gran Canaria mermaid, yeah.
She's out there. So that trip was successful. You caught loads of carp. You've gone from one sighting of someone swimming to 180 carp, and then you've hinted there about your second trip with Gary. Was there much? Obviously, you're a bit more prepared and you've got a bit more intel because you fished it. Was there much difference between those two trips, or how did that come about?
It was. Just let me tell you the end of this first one. Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
I've never fished more than a week in my life, and I did find the 2-week session hard. To be honest, I've had enough. Maybe you can have too much of a good thing, but for me, 2 weeks of fishing and, as I say, it was, not eating anything hardly, washing in the lake, and you're never clean when you're washing a lake. You're never clean. You're just going through the process, and it was a mid-afternoon, I think, late mid-afternoon flight home, and so it would have been a real ball breaker to have made it, packed up. It was 2:00. I remember now. So we'd have had to be at the airport at 12. Never got light to, I think, 6:37. So it would have been a real ball breaker to have packed up and got down that mountain to the airport in time. So we both agreed we go the day before. Dave has been going to Gran Canaria for years on holiday. So he knew a hotel where he was confident we could get in. And, so we go and have a decent shower, clean up, go out for a nice meal, celebratory meal our last evening, and then go home the next day. So both agreed that. So we got up at dawn, packed up, right mission, getting the gear now the wrong way, up through the rip stream, up the hill, all that. Anyway, you eventually got checked into this hotel at 3:30 in the afternoon. Yeah. So from getting up at 6:37, we haven't eaten all day. Oof. So I had a great shower. I'll never forget that shower. One of the best showers ever in my life.
I bet, mate.
It's like you've been starving for 2 weeks on a fishing trip, and you have fish and chips, or you smell bacon drifting across the lake. It's one of those moments. That shower's immense. Anyway, I've agreed to meet Dave in the bar at 5. I've gone down there. He said, "What do you want to drink?" I said, "I have a gin and tonic." Weird thing, the only time I ever drink gin, by the way, is on holiday.
Right.
And even then, so he got me a gin and tonic, which has come up in like a half-pint tumbler. And I thought, God, that's a bit strong. I've drunk it. And my round, and then when I go to a restaurant, so I've gone up and got it. And I watched this barman pour a whole bottle, well, not a whole bottle, neat gin into this half-pint tumbler. And then just put a little bit of tonic, like 1/2 inch deep on the top. Wow. With this gone, I'm going to just have done a pint of gin. So goes back, we had that drink. And then Dave says, we're going to have a meal.
Yeah.
So he takes me to this restaurant, and we walk in, and the maitre d's come over, and it's, good evening, Mr. It's so great to see you. My wonderful friend, my best friend, you're up. And I'm listening to all this crap. Dave's obviously taking me to his favourite restaurant where the guy really patronises him because he's been going for years, spending loads of money. So I'm listening to these two making verbal love. Yeah. And I'm looking around, and I was just gobsmacked. I've never been in such a big restaurant. Hundreds and hundreds of covers, maybe 300-400 covers. It was huge. And every table's taken. So I'm thinking,
What, full, really?
I'm thinking it must be a good restaurant. Oh, David, I'm sorry. We have no space. We are so busy tonight. But you, my friend, my best friend, I will find you a table. I would never let my best friend down. Oh, Jesus, I was about to throw up over the gin. Anyway, so he takes us to this big round table where there's a family of 4 sitting at it. Mummy, daddy, and 2 kids. Germans, right?
Right.
And I've got a baby Fraulein and baby whatever the male version is dead opposite me, peering at me through this big flower display in the middle of the table. You know, little round glasses like an inch thick, and they had the braces and the shorts, and they're both glaring at me. You know, who are these 2 scruffy urchins who've come into their lovely little world? Anyway, so we sat down, and like I said, it's a big table, a big lovely white tablecloth, and this big centre vase of flowers or bowl of flowers. And next thing I know is I'm in blackness.
What?
I'm in total blackness, and my head is really hurting. Right? And I've struggled up, and I've got the tablecloth over my head. And I've been whacked by the vase, the bowl of flowers. And what's happened is I leant back slightly on the chair, and with all the gin and not eating all day, I've momentarily passed out. But I felt myself going backwards, and I've grabbed the tablecloth. So I pulled the whole tablecloth and the bowl of flowers off in this restaurant with about 400 covers. And I've staggered up, and like everyone's silent, mouths open. Oh, it's so fucking embarrassing. Dave looked at me as if he could kill me because his best friend.
What did his mate say?
Oh dear. So anyway, we sat down, tidied up the tablecloth, put the bowl back on, and we had our meal. And that was my goodbye to Canary for the first time.
Jeez, they've let the riff-raff in here, haven't they?
So we certainly went, saw and conquered. But couldn't wait to get back. I told Gary Bays about it, who then was a foreman, Catcham. So it's not going well with me and Rod. So I really decided to take him so I could kind of find out what was going on up there, all the politics and bad feelings. So we had a week there.
How? 2 questions here. The first one probably is, how did you and Gary sort of come to be, or how did he come to be the foreman?
Well, when Rod asked me if I'd take a equal stake in Catcham, Gary was the foreman.
He was already there.
He was already there.
Okay.
Mandy's wife run the office. She probably got in the job, actually. Gary was, in essence, a farmhand. He was a tractor driver.
Okay.
So she probably got in the job. Keen angler. Carp weren't as big in Lincolnshire then as they were in the south. He was lucky to catch a 20, I think. In fact, I think Gary broke his PB 5 or 6 times the first afternoon.
Is this on Gran Canaria? Wow.
Yeah, I put him in my best spot.
Back in the arm with the bamboo?
Yeah, and we got there, some reason I can't, flights must have changed. We got there early, around lunchtime, I think, and discovered a restaurant. Couldn't believe it. Dave always gave me the impression there was no restaurants or no decent shops there, but we found a decent restaurant a little bit further up the mountain, so I could have had good food at first.
Oh no!
So I told Gary my experience about baiting and leaving it. So we piled in a load of sweet corn. We've already got loads of cases of sweet corns, clearing out supermarkets where we could. And then we went and had a lovely steak and got back. I think we got back about 3-4 in the afternoon. And, say as soon as he's put out, he's into, I think, 26. I think he had 5 big 20s that day. I don't think he got a 30 that first day.
That's like heaven for him, sure.
Oh, yeah. Break your PB 5 times in the afternoon. And that started a pattern, understanding about when to put your lines in and not, and really max out your enjoyment. So really we did a lot of sightseeing. We used to get up in the morning, put the rods out. We'd have a period of action till about 11. Then we'd wind the rods in, bait heavily, and go sightseeing and get a decent meal somewhere,
Yeah.
and then come back about 4 o'clock, fish till dusk, again, so we're having a morning hit and an evening hit, and then wind the rods in and go up to that bar I told you about.
It's civilised,
and then
isn't it?
and then get our heads, get back on our heads, get our heads down and go to sleep. And Gary was a character as well. So Dave, as I said, was a character. One thing I remember about Dave was he was a builder, always building walls out of rocks there. He used to sit, with just his head peering over his wall of rocks, these rods. Strange, but with Gary, he's just, what the hell,
Yeah.
I'll never forget one night we went up the bar, and he's not a big drinker, Gary. If he drinks too quick, he gets drunk very quick. And we're coming down this real strong slope I told you about. It's real lot of scree on it.
Yeah.
And he's gone over. He's gone down his arse. And he's actually bounced back up. So the equilibrium going down the hill, and he's carrying on walking. And he said, "Oh, me back. I've broken me back." He said, "I'm paralysed." I said, "Gary, you're still walking, you knob." Anyway, I put him to bed. He sat on. No, that's right. I said, "Look, I'm going to make you a cup of coffee." He's in such a state, so he sat on my bed chair. I made him a cup of coffee. Then I put him to bed, and then the next, that morning we fished, and then we're going to go sightseeing, restaurant or whatever.
Yeah.
He can't find the car keys.
Oh no.
We searched that bloody mountain. I don't know how many times I walked up and down it. But we searched it all that afternoon and evening. Couldn't find the car keys anywhere. All the next day, kept looking for them. Couldn't find them. And now getting a bit distraught here.
Yeah.
How the hell are we gonna? This is before mobile phones or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
No one in the village spoke English. So how the hell we got into a hard company and said, "Look, can you get keys up here?" Anyway, so I've got the major salts and ump with him, that following night. And I got up in the morning, I'm just sitting there, I'm just going through it all, gone up and down that path where he went, checked in the bar. Okay, we come out the bar, down that slope, he fell on his arse, got over the stream. I'd even waded in the stream, got back to mine. I made him a cup of coffee. Jumped into me bivvy, me brolly, went for my sleeping bag, and the keys were in the bottom of my sleeping bag.
Oh no.
Dear.
At least you had him though.
At least we got them, yeah.
My days.
Yeah, we had another one where he was careless when we was driving, and we ended up with 2 punches. You only get 1 spare. So it was by the side of the road, and this farmer come along, this tractor, pointed, and he said, "Got to take him away."
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, 5 hours later, I said, "Gary, do you think he intends to bring our wheels back?" Just suddenly. Anyway, he did. Bless him. About 5.5 hours. But I was getting to worry there. He's just had us over and nicked our wheels.
What a legend of a farmer bringing them back.
Yeah, he brought them back. Yeah, well, it's like, I think you find in these agriculture countries, don't you, where they're not. It's just country folk, very simple and honest. I've seen so many examples of that in places like France and that.
Yeah.
They just help each other, don't they? Someone's in trouble, they help. They were very much like that. I guess I think I went 6-8 different months to Canaries.
Wow.
But I never ever have been there for a holiday.
Yeah.
He always played English where we went to that restaurant with Dave Plummer. Really? Really? Would I ever want to have a holiday there?
Yeah.
Just masses of people and the beach is crowded, but up in the mountains there, it's a stunning place. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember, again, that was with Gary. We went one November, and it rained. Massive amount of rain before we went, In fact, we struggled the last few miles because some of the walls have been washed onto the roads.
Wow.
Anyway, we got there, and I'm looking at the lake. I just said to Gary, it's different. Something's different about it. Just couldn't figure out what it was.
Okay.
And my eyes drifted across a peninsula where I fished with Dave. And I used to lean against this big pine tree that was about 40, 50 foot high.
Wow.
And I could see it, 4 foot of it sticking out of the water.
Wow.
You know, because the banks are so steep, it wasn't really noticeable when the levels went up. You know, and it had gone up like 40 foot.
That's mad.
And the water's the colour of clay. We never caught a carp all week. We found them struggling to survive, you know, to breathe, because, you know, there's so little oxygen in the water. Anyway, there's a guy called Jürgen, the bear, big German guy who'd opened a little restaurant on the edge of it. He's a great guy. And he built a little wooden house there as well. He invited us mushroom picking one day. You know, so because all he was doing, just going up to his and just spending our time chilling in his restaurant every day. There's nothing else to do. You know. Anyway, it was the last but one morning, and it rained all week, hadn't stopped. And this particular morning, we got up. It's not raining. You know, and the sun was out, and you know, so I had t-shirts and shorts on.
Yeah.
So we got up to his restaurant, started up the road, right to the top. And the top of Canary is actually like Scotland. It's all pine forest. Absolutely gorgeous. I've never been up there. But on this particular day, it was a real dense fog. And the moment we got out of the cars, I thought, what have I done wrong? You know, because I only had shorts and a T-shirt on. And it's like, it felt like 30 degrees Fahrenheit, not centigrade up there. Anyway, they introduced us to these Canarians. And we each went with one Canarian. And we had a huge basket. He held one side, I held the other. And we walked through the pine mountains, you know, real steep slopes, looking for these fungus that are like huge growths, I don't know, size of a dinner plate, some of them.
Wow.
That used to be underneath the pine needles, and you just see them sticking through. Okay. And it was the fog was so thick, they was yodeling to each other to keep in contact. You know, I'll never forget that, you know, magical moment. You know, and that's, I always said, you know, carp fishing's given me so much, but the biggest thing it's given me is experiences and friendships all over the world. You know? Anyway, so we picked these big baskets of mushrooms, and I am freezing. I'm on the edge of exposure. And then they took us back to this log cabin in the forest and served us this lunch, which was, I think it was meant to be a Canarian speciality. It was like a fish soup. It was like water, as far as I was concerned, it was like water with fish bones and sweet corn in it. It was disgusting. And my teeth were chattering as I was eating it. I was so cold. I couldn't wait for you, because, you know, you can't just say I've had enough. You know? In these kind of situations, you have to have to acknowledge the custom, you know? Yeah. So I was so relieved when Jürgen said, we go now. And we got back to his freezing. It took me a couple of hours to warm up. And then he said, we must prepare the mushrooms. So we helped him skin all these fungi, all slimy. It was like frogs. Oh. You know, bloody horrible things. I wouldn't have wanted to eat them. Anyway, the next morning we're leaving, so we thought we'd have a bit of breakfast, hoping to get a nice breakfast of bacon and eggs. Jürgen said, I'll make you a special breakfast. He serves up these bloody mushrooms, which didn't taste much better than I described. Anyway, so we've ate all them, ate what we picked ourselves to suffer for. Yeah. And just out of courtesy and politeness, as you do, you know, I said, how much do we owe you? Yeah. He bloody charged us. I couldn't believe it.
Did he?
After everything we went through, yeah, he charged us for that. But yeah.
Fair play. It sounds like, as ever, like a perfect time to be on there, but pioneering stuff in terms of the fishing. And obviously good enough that you've gone back subsequently with
We learned
Gary.
a lot. I mean, it was good fishing with Gary, because great respect to Dave, a lovely guy, but he... Up until then, he wasn't a carp angler. In fact, I think that trip, thinking about it, probably made him a carp angler, because he went on to do a lot of carp fishing. He got the bug from it. But, you know, Gary was, and so we worked together and put our heads together. And Gary, by nature is greedy, bless him, and he always wants to push things, so I told him about my sweet corn rigs where, I had a little pile of sweet corn because it was simple. You're putting 15 cans of sweet corn out, but you're getting bites within a few minutes of the swim, carp ending the swim. What's going on there? Greedy pig thing. They're looking for the biggest pole. So Gary starts pushing that. So, the hair is now pinned to the back of the shank opposite the hook point. So we changed the hair for a little loop, and then we were threading up. It ended up 9, 12-inch lengths of hook link with sweet corn.
Wow.
And then tying that in a loop to the little loop, on the back of the shank. And then, of course, Gary wants to push it, so he puts another loop on. And we ended up with cylinders of sweet corn, I don't know, 3-4 inches long and maybe 2 inches diameter, like a quarter of a can of sweet corn, if you like, as a rig. And that really worked well. So it was instant takes because of the size of the baits. And as I said, resting the swims, it really, if you did, if you just fished all day, I think it was a couple of days we decided to chill, you might only catch 1 or 2 fish. So I think what was happening, as I said to you, I always saw them only rolling singly. They was basically patrolling singly, but say one coming to your swim, is having a good mooch, which attracts another one. And so by resting the swim, there's that attracted 3, 4 or 6. Whereas if you stayed fishing, you catch the one, and you'd have to wait till another may be attracted or not. It definitely massively increased your catch rate by resting the swims.
What were they like as well in terms of like fighting characteristics? Obviously, you said they're quite long, they're quite lean.
We did
not
fight.
Fish for. Were they pretty pretty hard fighting fish?
They were hard fighting fish. I went back and did a video called Canary Carping.
Right.
This young lad, Nick Reed, who went on to do carp fishing.
Yeah.
Who's that lot who got that topography?
Sipography?
Yeah, well, he started that.
Right, okay. With Joe?
Yeah, with Joe, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. But prior to that, he was a young kid, and he just contacted me and said, would I be interested in making a carp video? I said, well, yeah. I said, do you want to come to Gran Canaria? Yeah. And it weren't until I got on the plane, because I was agreed to finances, I thought, what have I done here?
So you never met him?
I think I'd had one meeting with him. But say this kid who's up until now, he'd only left school a year or 2 before, and done a couple of wedding videos. And I've agreed to finance us all going to Gran Canaria, and I didn't know him, what he was like at all.
That's a massive shout, isn't it?
It was stupidity, So anyway, we got there, and the carp were everywhere spawning.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was an absolute disaster.
What's the timescale between that first trip with Mr. Plummer through to when you're going back to film this?
It's the following year.
Is it the following year? Okay.
Yeah, they were always spawning. Every time I went there, they were spawning. But this must have been they were spawning when I went in that marsh. That noise I kept hearing, by the way, on the far bank that first night, it was fish thrashing. Those always spawning, but generally it was just a little bit of spawning. But this must have been the big effort. It was like May, I guess. So
en masse.
The level used to go up and down quite significantly, as I said to you, 40 foot in, that time when it flooded. But when it was really full, and I don't think it's been like that in recent years, speaking to Dave and Hassan, it flooded this potato field. And I'll never forget, we was one morning sitting in Jurgen's calf, which overlooked this potato field, and it's just full of carp, in like a metre of water, all spawning. And this guy come down from the village, no top on, and he had a 6 foot long pole with just a spike on the end, and he was wading out trying to spike them, catch them, but he didn't have a barb on the end. I saw him stab probably half a dozen carp, big 20s, and as he's trying to lift them out, they just got off, and then he eventually got one and disappeared up the hill. There's no point in being angry. That's the lifestyle and that. But
that weren't the fish that was in Jurgen's soup that previous time, was it? It wasn't carp and sweet corn, was it?
No, it's cod. The one up in the mountains was cod. But say all the fish were up in the potato fields. You couldn't get near them; they were so spooky. So you wouldn't really ever consider fishing for spawning carp. But say we'd gone to do this film, so we was trying to find the odd fish, but we couldn't. Anyway, where this is going, to answer your question about fighting, I've gone round to that back bay, and I was sitting on really high up one afternoon, and further along, I saw a dark shadow slowly mooching along the bank, and then another one. It's a spot I'd never fished. These fish clearly weren't interested in the spawning this time, and so I said to Nick and another lad with him, because they were sleeping. Jurgen had some accommodation by this time. They were sleeping at his. So I said, right, I'm going to set up here. Be round first thing as soon as the light comes up. I said we might have our first chance of the week. Knowing they would move out at night. So I set up, and because I was further down the bank, it wasn't like in the bottleneck. I don't think they all moved out there. I'll never forget it. I'm fishing probably, my bed's probably no more than a metre from the rods, which are right on the edge. And I've woken up in the middle of pitch black night to whoosh.
Oh, yes.
It's here.
Here we go.
So I think this is our 4th or 5th day. We have not had a bite yet. And it's here. I can get one for the film.
Yeah.
Well, you reckon I did? I still I'm in disbelief to this day.
What?
I wound my rods in.
You wound your rods in?
Yep.
Just to let him get some confidence, or what?
No, because I'm just so focused. We've got to film this. I can't possibly catch it. I didn't think, well, at least if I catch it, we've saved the film. All I'm thinking, it's got to be filmed.
Can't do that in the pitch black, can you?
Can't do that in the pitch black. So I was just so obsessed with now getting this film that I never thought it through. So I've wound the rods in. Anyway, the lights come up, and it's lighter and lighter, and now it's full light. I'm doing my bollocks. Where's Nick?
Get it.
Where's Nick? And then again, I felt I had no option but to put the rods out.
Yeah, too right.
What had happened, by the way, Basy's got up, and he's on the right over the other side. He's in the other arm, right, just for the potato field. He's got up, spotted a carp about 17 pound, and he's called Nick and his mate over as they're on the way over to me. And he caught it, and so they've filmed this poxy 17 pounder, which is all stressed anyway, because it's right on the edge. It's probably come out of the spawning bay. We never used it. So anyway, I felt I've got to put the rods out, and I've had this take. It's gone screaming off, and it's gone to me right. And it's gone into this bamboo thicket. So I ain't letting this go. So I've just walked straight into the lake. Right, got it out the bamboo thicket. I'm up to here in water.
Yeah,
right? And I'll never forget it. It shot past me, and the surge of water went over my head, and I was screaming at the gods. It would have been one of the best bits of carp film.
It sounds nuts.
Of a carp being full, ever. I was screaming at the gods. You're not going to get away, you bastard. I'm going to land you. And then it went in another bamboo thicket, and so I smashed through the bamboo thicket, chased it out, and I was chasing it along the margins, say up to my neck in water, and I eventually landed it. I was exhausted. I think I played it for half an hour, 3/4 an hour, because it kept on snagging me through these bamboo thickets. And to say none of it was on film.
No. How big was it?
It was a 30. I think it was 34. I don't know. It was definitely 30. Really long fish. And then Nick and that turned up. You know, did they get it from me? But so at least we filmed it, and I think what we did, we put it in the net, and I put the hook in the net as if I just landed it. You know. And, but then I kind of got a repeat performance when they was there. I had another take. If I remember, that was a double. 16, 18.
Right.
And that went through the bamboo as well. So, you know, they got a shot of me waiting, if I remember trying to land that.
Again, all on sweet corn?
All on sweet corn, all on the big greedy pig rigs. And you remember I tell you about that hardware store?
Yes.
Well, when we gone that week when the river was when the lake was in flood, I'd gone in there one evening after the bar. And the owner was playing a 12-string Spanish guitar behind the bar. And so he pointed, you know, he had a glass of port, I think, or wine. He pointed to that. I said, yeah. So he got me out a glass of wine. And then this other guy come here with a 6-string guitar. And they both got stalls out from behind the bar, and they both were playing the guitars. And then this little girl came out, must have been his daughter. I don't know to this day if she was deaf and dumb, but she stood between them and was miming and doing all this miming. And it was really kind of quite magical, you know. Yeah. So when we did this film, Canary Carping, I went back up there and asked them if they'd play for us, and Nick recorded it, and that was the soundtrack for the video, you know. So, yeah, somewhere out there must still be some copies. So it's called Canary Carping.
So that was a week shoot.
Week shoot.
And did you have just those 3 fish, or did you have any more?
No, I didn't catch any more.
Wow.
So we were so lucky to catch them.
At least you managed to make a piece of it. Otherwise, it would have been
just managed to pull it off.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and that was that.
So, Kev, apart from obviously you filming the early trip with Plymouth and the subsequent trips with Gary, you ever go back to the Canaries?
I went back once, must be 10 years ago. As I said, Dave and Alison, who run Canary Holidays, whatever it's called, they're good friends now. I went over there to see them and have a holiday, but no, I've never ever fished it since. There is a story there, actually. When we went over with Dave and Alison, you know, I really wanted to obviously see the Cheerer, so he took me up there. And there was an English guy fishing. He introduced him to me. We left, you know, the island, went home, and we actually saw the guy at the airport. He's on the same flight as us. Anyway, it's a nightmare flight, bloody Ryanair. You know, I'd rather walk on hot coals and go with that airline. But that's another story. We eventually got into Stansted Airport. I think it was like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. And everyone's very tired, long day travelling, very ratty. And then we get to passport control, and it's like Piccadilly Circus. I actually said to the passport guy, a bit busy tonight, mate. They're never the happiest of people, are they?
Nah.
He said, we've been here all night, no one, and now everyone's arrived. He said, that's bloody Ryanair for you. I said, what do you mean? Ryanair get a cheaper rate on the real late slots. So that's why you end up arriving in the middle of blooming night. Never think of a customer, good old Ryanair. But anyway, so we got through there. And my next remark was, I suppose we're going to be the last to have our luggage on a carousel. But as I'm walking towards it, I can't believe it. We used to do these big carryalls with wheels. Yeah, I specially designed them for travelling. So like the cross between a suitcase and a carryall, really. It's a long thing. So they had wheels, so you could wheel them around an airport. But they was pretty good for fishing tackle and all that. And there's my Globetrotter, we call them. And there's a Globetrotter going around the carousel. I can't believe it, bit of luck. But I've gone up to it, and it's bound in like white rope with a padlock the size of a dustbin lid on it. The owner's clearly into bondage. So anyway, we're waiting. Everyone's grabbing their bags. begin to get a bit of an uneasy feeling, just down to me and this lady with a young boy, just us. Then the carousel stopped. Oh, no. Then it started again, a few bags come out. Oh, good. Must be us in this lot. So the first one that comes round, I looks at the ticket, and it's the next flight. Gutted. It's now like 2:30 in the morning. I've been up since 6 the previous day. So he goes over to the lost whatever, and it's a rather large lady. I starts explaining that Ryanair appeared to have lost my bag, and immediately she goes into one on when it isn't Ryanair's fault.
Oh, no.
And when it could be Ryanair's fault. This went on for it seemed like 20 minutes. I think I worked out in the whole 20 minutes there might be one example when it is Ryanair's fault and they are liable. But the rest of the time, it's mine. I'm just waiting to get a word in edgeways. Anyway, she's finally shut up. And I explained to her that I made luggage. And that particular bag I pointed out that's going around the carousel is one that my company's made. And in all the years I've been travelling, I've never seen one before. Mm-hmm. And so she put two and two together, said, oh, can you go and get it then? So I'm walking over thinking, what am I doing? Being ordered around to go and get someone else's bag. You know, if the right person comes up now, there could be a right row. Anyway, so I picks it up, takes it back to her. She looks at the ticket and gets a number off it, goes on the computer, and she says, we always ask customers to give us a contact phone number. She said often they give us a wrong number so they don't get hassled with sales calls, but we'll give it a go. She got the number, calls it, and stuff number. Great. So I've got to fill in the paperwork now, which is an inch thick. Oh. I'm half an hour into that, so it's now like 4 o'clock, and her phone rings. And she says, a guy got off your flight, he's got on the coach, and he's realised he's got the wrong bag. Oh. Right? He's come back to the airport, and he's been waiting some time for them to find someone to bring him back. At that moment, it's all come home to me. What I think was in the back of my mind has now come to the front. It's him. Yeah. It's that bloke I saw up in the mountains of Dechira.
No way.
It's got to be. Yeah. When I get hold of him, I'm going to slaughter him. This is when I was writing that series in Cart World. I was often very controversial. Yeah. Thoughts from an Essex monastery. And I'm going to slaughter him. I'm going to write about him in Cart World, and all this. And anyway, we're waiting for him to come through. And so there's that kind of period of, a little bit of embarrassing silence, with someone you don't know. So to break that, I just turned around and said to her, I bet you can tell some stories. And she just laughed, thinking, the reference I made, I'm going to kill him. And she said, yeah. She said one night, she said we had a flight come in from Spain. And she said this bloke's come over, the type, like a wrestler. It's January, and yet he's only got a pair of shorts and a vest on, covered in tattoos, real big guy. And he comes out and says, I don't fucking believe this, my suitcase is lost. He said, do you know what? The best of it is, I've just come back from Mallorca, and when I arrived, my suitcase was lost that end. He said, I never had any clothes for 3 days. I was walking around with fucking underpants. And then when they find me suitcase, the bloke who took it by mistake, mine was red and his was blue. Anyway, so he's telling this story. And so she's filling the form, sir. Yeah. And like me, she's got the call. Someone's realised they've got the wrong suitcase. Right. Anyway, he's come through. It's only the same bloke done in both ways.
You're joking.
No, they had to call security to get him off him.
Yeah, I was going to say that would have been tasty, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Unbelievable. But so his suitcase was red and the other bloke's blue. Done in both ways. But anyway, yeah. So eventually come through. Let's say we had words. Yeah.
It was it him? Yeah.
Yeah, and I said to him, how the hell? I said, your bag got that dirty great rope round it and padlock and everything. He said, Kevin, you know the journey we had. He said, I just got off. He said, I saw a green globetrot. He said, I just grabbed it. He said, I just never. And after that, it's really made me be more cautious, on grabbing me bags, just in case someone's got the same bag. We now just always open a pocket and check, or look at the ticket, because really it's easy done, isn't it? And you always see that solitary suitcase, don't you, going around the carousel. Some poor bastard's lost his suitcase, and that's the one the bloke should have taken. There's not many flights where you don't see it, is there?
You always do. You get to that conveyor belt and there's one bag in there doing the lonely lap.
In answer to your question, no, I haven't been back and fished it in anger, but I kind of did go full circle. So many examples in my life where I've gone full circle. I did go back to Canaries, and that kind of is thanks to Dave and Alison. When I was on the Chira, Jürgen, I mentioned, he had a partner, a German partner. He was a dentist, I think. He basically funded the money for Jürgen to build a restaurant. And he was a real adventurer, and he'd been over to all the other Canary Islands, and he mentioned this one called Gomera. I'd never even heard of it, where he reckoned he'd seen carp in a lake bigger than in the Chira. Wow. Anyway, I told Dave that story, and he had a couple of lads over from Tenerife who come over a couple of times to fish. I think Dave basically taught them how to carp fish, and you could catch a ferry from Tenerife to Gomera, and they tripped over there and they found this reservoir and saw some very big carp, Dave told me. So it just had to be done. So me and Annan went on a real big adventure, which was the amazing Gomera trip, one me and Annan never forget, for so many reasons. It was an incredible adventure, incredible place, very unique from anywhere else in Europe. It's like a tropical rainforest, tree frogs and everything. And the carp, I just, to this day or before, I've never seen carp like them.
In what way? What do you mean?
They were like something prehistoric. They had huge pecs, and when I'm saying huge, bigger than my hand, and I've got big hands. And interestingly, I'm just so interested in everything around me. The undersides were really rough, and I'm convinced they used them like shovels. The top sides are smooth. There must have been something living in the mud, some shellfish, and I think they was using them like shovels and digging up the bottom. And the tails, you're talking 15, 18 inches across.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, they were, say, like dying, something out of Jurassic Park. But I kind of don't want to go into that too much, because I know Adam wants to tell that story for a future series we've got planned, which is why I haven't gone into the snake pit too much, or silver, because we've got them planned for something, haven't we?
Cool.
But no, that was the last time. 25 years later.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a fair time later, isn't it, mate?
And it was. Equally, it was as much fun with Alan as it was with Dave. Say Alan's a great one for being prepared. Yeah. He has more. He probably has more kit than I used to have in the tackle shop when I worked in as a Saturday boy. I never forget. I said, right, we've got to sort our gear out, because the same restrictions, isn't it? You're flying and all that. And he's walked in my office, with all this gear. He's got this. I said, what do you want that for? Well, you might get a chance of float. You won't. That's out. Yeah. And we had 3 hours where no, you can't take that. Can't take that. Yeah. And his bottom lip was dropping more and more. Bless him. But no, it was. Alan's one of the most amazing people to fish with. If you're of a similar like, i.e., you're focused and you're just work your what's his off. Be at it. 24/7. You can't get someone better to fish with if you're similar. Unfortunately, there's not many people who are like me. I think he has a lot of casualties along the way. Not many people have fished with him more than once.
He's a machine.
He is a machine.
But you two complement each other quite well, mate. I can well imagine.
Well, when I first used to fish with him, Alan's always been more about just wanting to catch, size. Whereas, I once said to him, "What do you rather catch? 10-20s or 140?" Straight away 10-20s. Yeah. So it really worked well. I used to call him my pest controller. He could have 99% of the carp, and I'd just have the big one. And funny enough, often it worked that way. So we was both really happy. Balanced out, but. I think now he's got more of the big fish bug, so it would be a bit more competitive, but yeah.
So it's fair to say Gran Canaria has had a fair bit of influence in your angling and also the development over time of Nash tackle in those formative years. I think that's a great place to round off part 3. We're going to definitely catch up again soon and talk through part 4 and more advancements, but I've thoroughly enjoyed that, Kev. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for watching and listening. We'll see you again soon. Cheers, mate.